Hi, I hope you're enjoying Global Life Skills Day and getting a lot out of these talks. I'm honored to be here today. I am Dr. Tiffanie Noonan, a pediatrician and a parenting coach with Epic Parenting. And today I'm going to talk about embracing the mess, how not to feel like a failure. And this is work that I came to authentically. So I want to let you know that for me, feeling the biggest mess of all was actually feeling my feelings and feeling my emotions. When I was 4 years old, I remember the day I was at a store with my parents and they were having a fight about money. Had nothing to do with me. But in watching that, I realized that I thought that it was better to not ask for anything and to not need anything. And at that point, I decided my life purpose was to make everyone else happy and make everything as easy as it could possibly be for everybody else. So I started looking for the clues in the world around me to do the right thing. So Tiffanie was smart, so I got good grades. I was told I was smart. That's what I did. When I talked about wanting to do other things with my life, I wanted to be a hairdresser when I was 6. And my best friend's mom told me, literally, I still remember the conversation. She said, if you do that, I'll kick your ass. You're too smart for that. And I started to let Tiffanie die. I let myself start to die so that I could fill the expectations of the world around me. And I chose not to feel my feelings anymore, because if Tiffanie really who she wasn't enough, then I had to put on a mask of doing the right thing and being neat and making the people around me feel good. When I was 12, I decided that I wanted to help others grow up to be healthy. In the mind of a 12-year-old, that meant I decided I was going to be a pediatrician. Well, that certainly did not get any negative responses from people. That was a career choice that made the people around me very happy. And I put my head down and I did it. I never gave it a thought again. I just took one step after the other and I became a pediatrician, got good grades, went to college, went to medical school, became the chief resident, became the lead physician in my first practice, got married, had a baby. And all of a sudden I started to feel not enough. I wasn't content. I was at this time 33 years old and I was not happy with my life, but I didn't think that I had a right to not feel happy because I had created what I wanted and I created what made everyone else happy. So I tried to fix it, right? Rather than actually figure out why I wasn't feeling happy, I did the logical thing. I got a higher paying job. I became a medical director of a practice. I decided I was going to create this perfect life where my kids were going to go to little league and I was going to bake and I was going to be a country doctor and everything would be perfect. It didn't work. So my kids were getting older and I was going to bed every night tired, frustrated. I was overwhelmed and exhausted. And I was yelling at my little boys, 2 and 3-year-old boys, every single night for not putting on their pajamas because they weren't listening to me. And that 4-year-old Tiffanie, who didn't think she was worth hearing and didn't want to ask for anything, was being triggered because here were her little kids showing her, you don't have a right to ask for anything. We're not going to listen to you. And I wish I could tell you that that feeling bad was enough for me to decide that I was going to embrace the ultimate mess of my feelings, but it took a little bit more than that. Life had to literally knock me on my ass. So at 37, I'm in my office running around, not feeling as a pediatrician, go into the exam room where I had ordered labs on a patient, go to sit on a rolling chair, gravity 1. Gravity 1, Tiffanie 0, I went down and shattered my wrist. Shattered my wrist. I don't know if you can still see it. I have a nice scar there. So what does someone who's not used to feeling her feelings and thinks life has to be neat do when this happens, by the way? I got up. I looked at my hand. It looked like a Z. This was horrific. The poor mom in the exam room, I still kind of feel bad for her. I don't think she ever came back. She was like, are you okay? I'm like, oh no, I broke my wrist. I opened the exam room door and I said to my nurse, someone's going to have to bring me to ortho or the ER after this. And then I shut the door and I tried, and I actually didn't try. I finished that appointment with my wrist broken. And the next day I had to have surgery. I had to have a metal plate put in. I had to rest. So I thought. It was Friday, had surgery Friday. I was text messaging the VP of the hospital while under anesthesia. I know later because I saw the text messages. And I tried to go back to work on Monday because that's what neat Tiffanie does when she doesn't know how to feel. And I got kicked out of my office by my office manager and by human resources. Apparently, crying between patients because you're in so much pain isn't actually an acceptable practice. And they sent me home for 2 weeks. And I was lost. I had not any way of knowing what to do when I couldn't be mom and I couldn't be Dr. Noonan. And it was in that I had just enough awareness to know that the fact that I didn't know how to take care of myself, I didn't know who I was without those identities, triggered in me, I don't know what I have to change and I don't know what I have to fix, but I'm going to say yes to something in my life. A few months later, I came across a parenting coaching course and I was like, I'll start with parenting. I'm a pediatrician. Maybe I can learn something that I can bring back into my practice. And that changed everything. Because in that practice, in the process of learning how to actually feel my feelings, learning why I was yelling at my kids, I found that those emotions weren't as scary as I thought they were. And I learned in that message that it was critical for my joy, for my peace, and for my family that I feel them. And that I look at the mess around me and I stop seeing it as a mess and I start to seeing it as opportunity. And I stop viewing my feelings and my emotions as positive or negative and instead just look at them as feedback. Is something going well or is something not going well? And it was in that that I decided to leave my practice as a pediatrician and start to follow my dream and my passion of still doing the same thing that 12-year-old wanted to do. My mission, my passion is still the same. I want to help people grow up to be healthy. And how do we do that? We actually learn how to feel. And I started Epic Parenting on that premise that I was going to help people learn to be with their feelings so that their children could learn to be with their feelings. And in this work, what I have learned is that I was not an isolated incident. The fact that I could make these jokes in my office all day about, I mean, I used to joke all of the time that I was saving up money for my kids' therapy because I did not know what I was doing. And I was the professional, but I was saving up money for their therapy because I don't know what I'm doing. I could make those jokes and people would laugh because they could relate. And as long as I was sitting there as the model of like, oh, it's all right and it's perfect, it wasn't giving anyone else enough space to say, this doesn't feel good. So I started this practice and I have had so many parents and we end up coming up against very often the same story. I feel like a failure. I feel like a failure in parenting. I feel like a failure at my job. I feel like a failure in this life. And I want to encourage you to say, well, what can we do about that, right? How can I take that feeling and do something different? So let's talk about those emotions. What if in life you let yourself check in and you actually said, what am I feeling right now? Even if you don't know what you're feeling, give yourself, be open to saying, I'm going to check in and see what my body's telling me, see what I'm feeling in my body. So I had this one client who, she was actually a mom of one of the kids. So I knew her from my practice before, and I've been working with her since then. But she was successful by every standard that you could see, except for the fact that she felt like she was breaking her children. She was living in Georgia. She's not that interested in embroidered clothes and had these standards that she had set for herself of what life was supposed to look like. And since she didn't meet those standards, she was fairly certain that she was going to end up alone and nobody would actually ever see her. So we tapped in and we said, well, what are you really feeling? And she got to look back and say, okay, when this story comes up, I'm feeling nervous and I'm feeling a little bit scared. And when we take that feeling and we say, well, when do we first feel this? What story? What are you believing right now? What are you believing that is leading to that feeling? When we can identify that story, the story of I'm supposed to always be pulled together and that's just not who I am. I'm supposed to look a certain way in the South and you're not fitting into that. That's when we can say, is that story even true? Where did it come from? Can we find gratitude for it? Gratitude for the experience we had as a younger child, gratitude for the story that led to that feeling because it made you who you are today, right? Gratitude for learning, me personally, gratitude for being put in a box. I learned resilience. I learned how to do things my way. I am grateful for the ability that I have as a human to do things on my own, and it wasn't serving me anymore. And I got to be open to allowing help from the universe and allowing other people to help me in. So finding gratitude in that story, and from that we get to choose a new reality. The client had the reality of she loves her life now. What she got to realize is that she didn't need to change everything. I kind of had to change things. She liked her life. She was feeling like a failure because she had created expectations of what her life should look like. And those expectations were not in alignment with what she was and who she was, but the life she was living was. And letting go of failure was simply owning that this feeling is an old story and it's amazing and life is complicated, right? So when she stopped looking at her kids and expecting them to get perfect grades to make her look good to the moms at the PTA, she learned that she knows she loves her kids. She no longer has to compensate for the second grader that she was, who had a hard time reading and felt out of place, and worry about her kids going into second grade and what that's going to mean. She gets to let them live their life and live their experience. So I do this as a parenting coach, but the reality is I look at the world that we live in, right? I don't know if anyone's here life hasn't been touched by not feeling like enough, by overwhelming emotions that you don't know what to do with, by thinking it's safer to shut them down. But I know that addiction, alcoholism, television, overeating, all of these things are ways that we as humans have a tendency to shut down our feelings so we don't feel them and so that they're not uncomfortable. And what if this is the world, this is why I'm here today. What if we started teaching this to everyone? What if it wasn't wrong to be scared? What if it wasn't wrong to feel sad? What if you got to feel those feelings and those emotions and then say, what can I do with it? Why am I feeling this? What can I create in my life? What if the mess with your kids didn't mean you were a failure? What if it just meant you weren't communicating well that day and you got to know a little bit more about them? I'm a parenting coach. This is not about creating a perfect life. My family, it is not rainbows and unicorns 24/7 around here because I have a lot of big feelings. Now, I have to be honest, when I was preparing this talk earlier and thinking I maybe didn't allow enough time to sit here and chat with you, and I had explained to my kids, who I have homeschooled for 6 years, this is not new, by the way. I am not sitting here in the 2020 pandemic homeschooling my kids and it's a new experience. No, this is our life. It's been our life. But my son interrupted me after I had said, I need some time to do this. And I snapped at him. I did. I was like, do you really need numbing medicine for your scratch on your leg right now? But what does feeling your feelings do? I got to forgive myself, have a little self-empathy, reflect on the reason why I snapped at him, and then to help him through this, I got to go back and say, listen, dude, you didn't deserve that. That was about me. It is not your fault that I'm feeling a little stressed right now. You deserve the attention. And is there anything else you need right now before I go lock myself in the room for an hour and I'm unavailable because I have needs too? So, feelings. They are simply an indicator of whether or not we are getting our needs met. As adults, we get to figure out what they are and how we're feeling about it. Behavior is the best attempt to get a need met. Nothing more, nothing less. If we would look at those feelings and say, okay, I'm not fulfilling my need for sleep, for attention, for significance, whatever it is, and it's causing me to be frustrated, angry, irritated, any of those feelings, it's feedback. It's not a failure. And in this world, I think that so many of us are doing an amazing job, and we are looking at standards that are hard to maintain and hard to keep up with, that we very often have put on ourselves. We can say society, but we've put it on ourselves as well. So today I'm going to encourage us all to realize that feeling our feelings and feelings our emotions is what makes us human. It's part of who we are. We are all feeling things. What we choose to do with them, how well we are willing to sit with them and learn from them versus learning that we're supposed to shut them down, learning that they're bad feelings, learning that little boys shouldn't cry, learning whatever messages that are out there, is not doing our world, not doing us a service. And as an ambassador with the global presence, it is my mission that we start to bring this work into schools, proactively educate those of us, look at the professionals that have done the work, that have done the research, and stop expecting just the parents to be able to model this. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if I stayed at what was modeled to me, I would think, why are you crying? Or I'll stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. Something is wrong with crying. And that it wasn't acceptable to feel emotions. This isn't a blame the parents thing. They did the best they could with the education that they had gotten. But now that we know so much more, and with the ability to bring this work into schools, I personally think it's probably more important that we are able to be emotionally resilient, that we're better able to understand our feelings and our emotions than some of the things that are being taught in schools. Look at 2020, right? This year has been a roller coaster for so many people. Our norms can get thrown for a loop. And if we're able to say, this isn't feeling good, and had the ability to say, why am I not feeling good, and tap in, it can keep us at an even keel. And I believe that we are all here to grow, and that this is a beautiful opportunity for all of us to reflect on, what are we valuing as a society? What are we putting our focus on? And bring the focus back to teaching the skills that we're all going to learn as humans to the best of our ability, and no longer leaving it to chance.